Caitlin Clark ripping her hand away from Methany White. Get your damn hands off me. Get your damn hands off me. And then Stephanie White's reaction is, hey! Get your damn hands off me. Hey! Hey! Yeah, no, get your damn hands off me. What the fuck is this? You think we're in high school? You think you're Bobby Knight? Stephanie White, you ain't fucking Bobby Knight. Sorry. You're not Bobby Knight. You couldn't even shine Bobby Knight's shoes. You couldn't even put on his socks. You couldn't even iron his. Remember this. Caitlin Clark doing what Caitlin Clark does, hyping up the crowd, getting the crowd rowdy. And here comes the coach. Here comes the coach, grabbing her. Why? What are we doing here? You can't show too much emotion, Caitlin. Everybody's gonna get mad at you, Caitlin. You can't show too much emotion. You're showing up everybody else. What are you doing? You'll take the fire out of the player. On the sidelines. Back and forth, heated back and forth, yelling at each other. Stephanie White pointing, like the annoying person that she is. It seems these coaches just can't help themselves. And here comes Brianne January, grabbing Caitlin Clark by the arm. Let me swing you around. Let me get up all in your face. These coaches are really on one, huh? Caitlin Clark and Brianne January, heated on the bench again. Woo! Damn! Forgot how much fire that this clip had. Oh, damn. Yeah. You remember that? There's a lot of this going on.
Caitlin Clark just physically ripped her arm away from her own head coach on national television. And what I'm about to show you proves this toxic situation has spiraled completely out of control. We're not talking about normal coaching disagreements here. We're talking about a pattern of physical intimidation that would get any other coach in professional sports fired on the spot. The footage that's breaking the internet right now shows something that should never happen in professional sports. Caitlin Clark is walking toward the bench when head coach Stephanie White reaches out and grabs her firmly by the arm, trying to yank her closer. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. Clark immediately rips her arm away with such force and defiance that you can practically hear her screaming, "Get your damn hands off me," without saying a word. The body language is unmistakable. This isn't respect between coach and player. This is a power struggle that's reached a dangerous boiling point. And Stephanie White's reaction? Pure panic mixed with venom because her superstar just publicly refused to be physically controlled on national television. But wait, it gets worse. This isn't some isolated incident that we can brush off as a misunderstanding. I've found at least 5 or 6 separate occasions where this exact same pattern plays out. The coaching staff physically grabs Caitlin, she pulls away, and the tension escalates. Think about this for a second. When's the last time you saw a coach grab LeBron James by the arm and spin him around on the sideline? Have you ever witnessed anyone aggressively pointing fingers in Luka Doncic's face during a timeout? Can you imagine Becky Hammon physically yanking Aja Wilson around like she's disciplining a child? Of course not. Because real coaches understand that superstars are partners, not subordinates to be physically dominated. But in Indiana, it's a completely different story. Here's what nobody else is talking about. Early in the season, we saw Caitlin doing what she does best, hyping up the crowd, bringing that electric energy that fills arenas and generates millions in revenue. And what happened? The coaching staff came out of nowhere, grabbing her, pulling her back, trying to extinguish the very fire that makes her special. They told her she couldn't show too much emotion. They said she was showing up her teammates. You know what that really was? Pure jealousy. They couldn't stand that the spotlight was solely on her, that fans were coming to see her, not them. So they made it their mission to knock her down a peg every single chance they got. And get this, the toxic behavior has completely infected the entire coaching staff. Assistant coach Brianne January is just as guilty of this physical intimidation. There's shocking footage of January waiting for Clark as she walks off the floor, forcefully grabbing her by the arm, swinging her entire body around, and getting directly in her face while screaming and pointing. Watch the way she manhandles Clark. Look at that physical aggression. These coaches are on a massive power trip, and they're using their authority to bully the one player who's single-handedly saving their franchise. Clark is literally forced to physically defend herself from her own coaching staff, just to get a moment of peace on the bench. Now here's the most uncomfortable question that the mainstream media is too terrified to ask. Why is Caitlin Clark the only player on this roster getting grabbed, yanked, and physically controlled by this coaching staff? I've watched every game, studied every interaction, and here's what I've noticed. Stephanie White and Breon January never put their hands on any of the other players like this. They don't grab them, they don't yank them around, they don't get in their faces with the same aggressive energy. So why does Clark get treated like she's public property that they can physically manipulate whenever they want? Is it because they think her polite Midwest demeanor means she won't fight back publicly? Do they believe they can continuously diminish her greatness because she's too professional to create a scene? But here's where it gets absolutely insane. The psychological warfare extends way beyond the physical grabbing. During games, you can see the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Clark will hit a deep logo three-pointer that brings the entire arena to its feet. And when she walks past Stephanie White, she gives her a quick blind high five without even making eye contact. Why? Because Clark already knows that hitting a brilliant shot means White is going to bench her on the next possession just to suppress her statistics and kill her momentum. It's sabotage disguised as coaching strategy. Even in post-game press conferences, the hostility is palpable and impossible to ignore. When reporters ask Stephanie White about Caitlin's incredible performances and her resilience through adversity, White completely fails to give her any credit whatsoever. She's literally allergic to praising her own superstar. She'll talk about team chemistry, role players, defensive schemes, anything except acknowledging that Clark just dropped 30 points and 8 assists. It's like she's physically unable to admit that her rookie is the most talented player she's ever coached. That's not leadership. That's insecurity and jealousy poisoning everything it touches. Here's the kicker that explains everything. The Indiana Fever front office, led by Kelly Crosskopf and Amber Cox, intentionally recreated the 2016 Indiana Fever regime. They brought back the old guard, the old players, the old coaches specifically to put Caitlin Clark in her place. This was never about winning championships or building around generational talent. This was about proving a point. They wanted to show Clark that she's not bigger than their organization, and they're perfectly happy to lose basketball games and play in front of empty seats if it means they win the internal power struggle against their own superstar. And listen to this part because it reveals their true mindset. The Fever organization knows deep down that Caitlin Clark is going to walk away from them the exact second her contract allows it. They know she's leaving them high and dry, and that's why their marketing department is desperately promoting bench players like Raven Johnson while completely suppressing Clark on their social media channels. They're trying to build an identity without her because they know they've already destroyed the relationship beyond repair. They're preparing for her departure because they treated her like an enemy instead of embracing her as their savior. So there you have it. We're witnessing a toxic power struggle where coaches are physically intimidating the biggest star in women's basketball, creating a hostile work environment that would be unacceptable in any other professional setting. This isn't about basketball anymore. This is about ego, control, and jealousy destroying what could have been a dynasty. The question isn't whether this relationship can be saved. It's already too far gone. The real question is how much longer Caitlin Clark will tolerate being physically grabbed and psychologically tormented by people who should be protecting her greatness. What do you think? Is it time for Clark to demand a trade and get out of this toxic situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I want to hear your take on this mess. If this breakdown opened your eyes to what's really happening behind the scenes, smash that like button, subscribe for more unfiltered WNBA truth, and hit notifications because this story is far from over. The scariest part about this entire situation is that we're watching Caitlin Clark's spirit being systematically broken down in real time. You can see it in her eyes during timeouts when the coaches are screaming at her. That fire, that confidence that made her a legend at Iowa, it's being extinguished piece by piece every single game. And here's what's truly heartbreaking. Clark is starting to second-guess herself on the court. The player who used to pull up from the logo with ice in her veins is now hesitating on shots she would have buried without thinking in college. That's not coincidence. That's the direct result of psychological abuse disguised as coaching. But let me show you the most damning evidence that proves this coaching staff has completely lost control of the situation. During their last home game, there's a moment where Caitlin Clark is trying to communicate a defensive adjustment to her teammates, and Stephanie White literally cuts her off mid-sentence, waves her hand dismissively, and tells her to sit down. Think about how insane that is. Your best player, your floor general, The person with the highest basketball IQ on the roster is trying to help the team win, and the head coach shuts her down like she's some scrub who doesn't know the game. That's not coaching. That's ego-driven stupidity that's costing them victories. And here's where it gets even more twisted. The veteran players on this roster have completely bought into this toxic culture because they're threatened by Clark's success. Watch the bench reactions when she makes incredible plays. While the crowd goes absolutely nuclear, her own teammates are sitting there stone-faced like they just witnessed something offensive. Kelsey Mitchell, who should be Clark's backcourt partner, barely celebrates her assists. Aaliyah Boston acts like Clark's record-breaking performances are somehow taking away from her own legacy. This is a team that's been poisoned against their own superstar, and the coaching staff is encouraging this jealousy because it gives them more control. The most infuriating part is how the mainstream sports media is completely ignoring this story because it doesn't fit their narrative. ESPN wants to celebrate the growth of women's basketball, so they're not going to report on the fact that the league's biggest star is being physically and emotionally abused by her own coaching staff. They'd rather pretend everything is sunshine and rainbows instead of acknowledging that we're watching a generational talent being destroyed by incompetent leadership. Where are the investigative reporters? Where are the player advocates? Where is the WNBA Players Association in all of this? Here's what's really happening behind closed doors that nobody wants to talk about. Caitlin Clark's camp has already reached out to multiple franchises through back channels to gauge interest for potential trades. Her agent is quietly building a case for why this situation constitutes a hostile work environment. They're documenting every instance of physical contact, every public humiliation, every time the coaching staff has undermined her authority on the court. This isn't speculation. This is preparation for a legal battle that could reshape how the WNBA handles superstar players. Clark's team is building a paper trail because they know this situation is unsustainable. And get this, the financial implications of this disaster are absolutely staggering. Caitlin Clark single-handedly increased WNBA viewership by over 400%. She's selling out arenas in cities that have never cared about women's basketball. Merchandise sales, ticket prices, television ratings, everything connected to her presence has skyrocketed. But the Indiana Fever organization is so consumed with their power struggle that they're willing to sacrifice hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue just to prove they can control their superstar. That's not just bad coaching. That's organizational malpractice on a scale we've never seen in professional sports.